world. I spoke exclusively to Angel Gurría as he prepares to step down as Secretary-General. He told me we must close the vaccine gap.
Today, we have a two-speed scenario where you have all the vaccines and all the fiscal space in the developed countries of the world, and then you have no vaccines or very few vaccines and no fiscal space in the developing countries, in the emerging economies. So I would say that that is the next immediate, very urgent issue that we have to tackle.
So what does it mean to do? What do you have to do then? I mean, all the major lending bodies, the World Bank, the IMF, they are all the NGOs, they are all busy working on that. But there seems to be a reluctance of developed countries to write off debt, even though they're coming up with the Paris Club coming up with a whole range of restructuring issues. But what for you is the answer here?
The question of vaccines first, because today the best economic policy is vaccination, and therefore the availability, the distribution. And then we have seen today that there are thousands of vaccines that are going to waste in the neediest countries. Why? Is it because they don't have the infrastructure, because they haven't organized in order to apply the vaccines? And remember, it's not the vaccines that are going to save the world, it's vaccination that is going to save the world. So that is very important. Second, the question of, you mentioned the question of debt. Deferring for 6 months or even for 1 year, the maturities is not going to solve the problem. I'm one of the veterans from the Latin American debt restructuring of the 80s and the 90s. And, we got 35% taken off the nominal amount and restructured over a very, very lengthy period of time. This is a type of major surgery that is going to be needed, and not only to the poorest countries in the world, because they depend mostly on, but also markets.
Do you think it's time for central banks to start withdrawing accommodation?
I would always rather err on the side of caution, and that means staying with accommodation longer rather than doing it too early. Remember the mistake we made in the great financial crisis before, and that is we removed accommodation and we removed the fiscal support too early. We should not do that this time, although there may be a moment in the future where we could taper off, as you say, and do it gradually, do it over time, as we have evidence that the recovery is taking hold.
Let me finish off, but you, during your time at the OECD, and you've always been so gracious in talking to us, and we're always so grateful to have had you on Crespin's Business. But if you look at the great financial crisis of the early part of your time, and you look at the pandemic, your entire time there has been spent in crisis, either great financial or European sovereign debt or emerging markets debt or pandemic.
I swear I wasn't responsible for them. But we just had to face the music. Yes, we had the big financial crisis, but the difference was in the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, you knew how much it cost to fix it. You knew how much it cost to pay the creditors of Lehman Brothers and how much it cost to fix General Motors or Ford Motor Company or Citibank. And you decided to pay it, and that was it. And it turned out to be a good business for the government because, of course, there was a turnaround, and now they're selling the stock at better prices, et cetera, et cetera. But in the case of the pandemic, it was a decision induced by the virus itself. That is the big difference, and we don't know how much it will cost in the end because it's still costing every day.
Finally, what are you going to do once you're finished here at the OECD? What's your next project?
Well, I have to go into some decompression, go back home, see the family there, see my two girls, and the son is in Cambridge in the UK. And after that, we'll see. I have to reinvent myself with all these 15 years of experience at the OECD and having been a Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Finance in Mexico, having done the debt of Mexico and the debt of Latin America, etc. I think there's a lot of work going forward. And of course, I'm ready and very anxious to apply all this experience into solving the problems of today.
Let me ask you a blunt question. Do you see a political career ahead?
I see a multilateral career. I see maybe some work with foundations. I see some work with with maybe even some institutions that do advocacy, etc. But this is where what I'm looking at now. But it's a little early.
Angel, may I just thank you on behalf of Quest Business and everybody on our team. You've been wonderful to come on the programme in Davos. It has been a pleasure. And whatever you're up to in your retirement or your years ahead, we hope it's profitable.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all this time, and for your friendship.